Hey guys, welcome back to another video and thank you so much for joining me yet again. If it is your first time here, and on this channel we talk about all things related to managing your money and adulting in general. And if that sounds like your type of vibe, please check out our other content. And if you like what you see, don't hesitate, smash that subscribe button and become a member of the team. So today we are doing something that we've never done before and I'm really excited about it. We're going to chat about something that is sort of a conversation on social media at the moment, and that is whether buying a car cash is better than using car finance. Is it a yes? Is it a no? I'm not sure how much the topic has actually trended, but it definitely got my attention. And I had two people reach out to me on what are your thoughts on buying a car cash versus using car finance. Now, for the context of those people who don't know, Yolz from Yolz channel, who is our big sister here on YouTube and one of my personal favorite people on the platform, posted this week that she bought her car cash. She bought her dream car, which is a Mercedes cash, a beautiful machine. And she spoke about her journey of saving towards buying the car and, what it took and how her faith and believing God for what she would, like to receive from him really played a big part in achieving this goal. Then while we were celebrating that and we were saying, congratulations, y'all, we're really happy for you. There were posts, reshares and everything. She then posted a story after that. I'm not sure when and the exact dates, saying that, somebody commented on on the platforms that she posted on and said, I really don't, basically I'm paraphrasing, but the individual said, I don't agree with buying a car cash. I basically feel like you could have done you could have used the money for something else that is better. You could have invested the money. You could have put it into your business or whatever the case may be. But the point is they felt like buying a car cash was not a good decision. And then Yolz's response was, look, I do have a finance and economics background. Hey now, and I'm pretty money savvy, so I know what I'm doing. This is not something that I decided on a whim. I did think about it, I did plan and save for it, and I know the stats, I know the status of my finances and why this made the most sense. So I also saw that story. And then after that, a friend of mine who's also in the industry called me and she's like, Andi, so what do you think about this entire conversation of buying a car cash? I'm not really sure what my stance is. And she also has an investment and finance background, but she's like, I'm not sure if the numbers really number, but at the same time, you don't want to owe money. So what do you think? And then we had a conversation about it. And then somebody else DM'd me and they were like, hey, I'm thinking of dissolving my savings and basically paying off my car because, maybe it's the best thing to do because I did see that Yolz bought her car cash. What do you think? So instead of responding individually and having all these thoughts running through my mind, I thought, let me actually come onto this platform and share my opinion publicly. First and foremost, a big congratulations to Yolz for her purchase. I'm not sure if she'll ever see this, but congratulations, girl, because you know what you have managed to accomplish is an inspiration to many. And I'm not even focused on what she actually saved for, like the end goal. I'm focused on the fact that she was able to save that amount of money. Please check out her car on Instagram and Google how much that car costs to be able to get to a position financially where you can save that lump sum, be it for starting your business, be it for putting a deposit on your house, be it for renovations, be it for buying a car. From my perspective, it doesn't really matter. The fact that she was able to save that amount of money and use discipline and diligence and her faith and everything else to accomplish that goal deserves a congratulations. What she then ended up deciding to spend the money on, I feel like is a secondary factor and something that is very personal, right? So that's first. The second thing is it's also really good to see people be more open and transparent on the decisions they are making and the goals they are accomplishing financially, because I think that whenever there's a certain narrative of how things are done, and in this case, how cars are bought, like cars, you get a loan. I've also got a video on my channel on how I bought my car, which was financed, by the way. there's so much content out there on financing a car, saving towards the installment, etc., and we begin to almost become conditioned to the fact that that is the only way that you can purchase a car. Buying it cash is not an option, especially for people like us. And I think that her being honest and transparent on her journey and her story shows, and most importantly inspires us to know that there are other options. You can buy a car cash. It is possible. It is an option. And not only that, but it's an option for someone who looks like me. And that was a big inspirational tick for me. Again, even if it's not buying a car cash that you want, but doing other things cash, we now know that it's actually possible to save towards that amount. Obviously, our circumstances are different, but I know that when you see someone, when you are represented in that light, it really does something for your confidence, and it does something for you believing that you can do it too. That is what I was absorbing from that story. And we'll get, guys, to the point of what is a better decision and was it a wise financial decision a bit later on. But I think that those are things that we should take from the story, the inspiration, the knowing that it can be done, the knowing that any of your financial goals can be financed with cash if you come up with the plan, you stay disciplined to it, and you actually work towards it. Another thing, which is creates the context. I feel like the way that this story was received is proof that there is no standard financial advice that's going to fit everyone. And some financial decisions can be great for you and can be really bad for me. The exact same decision in a different circumstance and context can mean something completely different to the next person. And that's where now we're really getting to the gist of the story. Was that decision a good decision or not? Guys, cash flow is a big problem, specifically in this country with most young people who fall within our age group. Cash flow is an issue. Like most people, or rather, let me say, because I don't have the direct stats, a lot of people do not have enough cash flow to, one, afford the expenses and the things that they need to pay, let alone enough cash flow to also save, invest, fund their businesses, etc. That is the reality of the context of the environment and the economic environment that we live in. And because of a lack of cash flow to meet basic needs, savings and investments and other goals, we then find ourselves as a economy that goes into debt as a solution. That is why debt is such a big issue. It's because there's a gap between what you need and what you want and what you can actually afford. And that is why a lot of people resort to debt that can sometimes be very, very expensive. And that is why I think we are so sensitive about buying things like houses and cars cash, because we are personalizing it and looking at our current circumstances for the majority of us and what we are able to afford and not afford. It almost seems like, why would you buy a car cash when you can use that money for emergencies, when you can use that money for investments, for starting a business, for paying your children's school fees in advance and all of those things? And that is because a majority of people are in that circumstance where meeting their basic needs and wants is a challenge. It's a great challenge. And that's why our minds cannot stretch far enough to even fathom what buying a house or buying a car could look like if we were able to afford it. So cash is king. Affordability is a problem. And high interest debt is also a problem. And that is why for most people, it is difficult to imagine buying a car cash. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it's a bad decision, but it means that in the current financial state of an ordinary individual, there isn't enough money to save that much money for a car and actually pay for it cash, especially a car to that status, right? And when you want to personalize this and save towards buying a car cash, a couple of things that you need to think about is, number one, do you actually have enough cash for example, if something were to happen, like a medical emergency, like you wanting to, help a family member, like you losing your job and not having a second alternative? Do you have enough cash flow to tide yourself over up until the point where you are okay without needing to borrow from the bank? Because if you need to borrow from the bank from that, you are going to borrow at a very high interest rate, because credit card overdrafts, personal loans have very high interest. They are unlike cars and homes that have a better interest rate because there's an asset behind it. So if for the ordinary person, you don't have that kind of cash lying around, and if something were to happen to you and it was an emergency, you would have to either dissolve investments or go to the bank to borrow money at high interest, then buying a car cash is probably not the best thing for you and your circumstances, because you're going to take all the cash that you have in savings, you're going to buy that car, right, that had a better interest rate in terms of borrowing, and then you're going to lack money for other things, and then you're going to live off your credit card or personal loans trying to keep up with life. Meanwhile, you have a car that's paid off, great, but also you've got expenses that you can't afford. You've got short-term debt that's very expensive, that's accumulating interest like crazy, but you've got a car that you own. Do you see what I mean? So in the circumstances of an ordinary person, it wouldn't make sense for those reasons. And that is why it's like, yo, was it a good financial decision? For an ordinary person who doesn't have an emergency fund, who doesn't have savings, who doesn't have a good cash flow, taking all that money and just putting it in a car, which is going to depreciate in value, meaning that if something were to happen and it's an emergency, don't expect to sell that car 6 months down the line and get the same amount. You're going to get less. You see how tricky it becomes when affordability is an issue? Exactly. So that is why financing a car might make more sense for the ordinary person who doesn't have the things that I've mentioned in place. Okay. Another thing is the investment conversation. Everyone is like, you should have invested the money. You should have put it into a business. Guys, number one, investments are not guaranteed. The return that you get on investment is not guaranteed. So you never know what you are going to get out. In fact, you could lose way more than what you have put in. So you can't say that an investment would have been a better option if you don't have an idea of what that investment is going to pay out and what kind of interest and growth is going to come out of that investment. Because it could so happen that your investment will give you 3% back, whereas the car was charging you 13% interest, which means buying the car cash could have actually yielded more or better results financially than going into that investment that's unpredictable. Are there investments that could probably give you more than what you would have paid in interest for the car? Yes, but what guarantee do you have, and what do your investments look like? And that is where it gets very, very personal. So saying that, no, it could have been invested elsewhere, where? What guarantees do you have of that return? Do you have historic interest rates to show that it would have been better? If you do, then great. Putting your money in that investment would probably have yielded better results than buying a car cash. But you can't say that that analogy applies for everyone, because everyone has different circumstances. Now, in saying all of this, I wanted to first speak about the ordinary person and why they should really think about buying a car cash, and why in those circumstances it might not make the most financial sense. Now, let me speak about the person who did tick those boxes, who did do the number crunching, who did do the comparison of their current investments and possible future investments, and found that buying a cash makes the most sense. It is never, and probably will never be, a good idea to borrow money that you don't have to borrow, because you are essentially asking the bank for 1,000 rand that you have and saying that you're going to pay them 1,100 rand, for example. Nobody borrows for fun, because borrowing is expensive. It comes at an interest rate. So if you can afford to do things cash, then definitely, I personally would do them cash. You know, if I knew that I have a fully funded emergency fund for like 6 to 12 months. If something were to happen, I can take care of myself with my emergency fund. I've already saved for everything that I want to do. My investments are in good order and they're paying good interest. And now I want to purchase a car, and I can't think of anything in the short and medium term that would give me better returns from this 500,000 rand that I have, other than buying a car. Then yes, I would definitely buy the car cash, because again, guys, I don't think anybody borrows for fun. I don't think people take loans because they love to borrow from the bank. I think people take loans from a point of need and from a point of not affording to do things cash. If you could do things cash, you already immediately save a lot of money in interest. You also save a lot of money in For example, financing your car comes with initial costs of financing the car that you pay as a once-off. You pay a lot of interest as well. You don't really own the car. So when you want to sell it, there's certain things that you need to think about as well. So I don't think, again, that buying a car cash is necessarily a bad financial decision. I just think that for most South Africans and for most people, it is not a feasible option. But I do think that because of that, we then convince ourselves that it's a bad option or it's a bad financial decision. Just because it doesn't make sense for most people, it doesn't mean it's a bad decision. Nobody borrows money because they would like to. If I could buy houses and cars cash, I would do so in a heartbeat. And I wouldn't even think twice about it, provided that it doesn't come at the expense of me having to go and borrow money at a higher interest rate from the bank a few months down the line. So you need to be very specific about, where do I stand? If I take all the savings I have and I buy this car and it breaks, what am I going to use to fix it? Am I going to need to crawl back to the bank? That's really what it boils down to. But if I buy this car cash and I'm super comfortable to do so, and if something happens, I can fix it without crawling back to the bank, then definitely save on that interest in any way that you can. And the same applies with paying off other debt quicker as well. Being debt-free is great. Most people can afford to be bad debt-free, but they have to borrow for their car and their home. But if you can afford to comfortably do that without any repercussions in the medium or long term, then definitely do that. So that's my 2 cents, guys. On the whole, is it better to buy a car cash or is it better to finance it? Again, some people don't like hearing this, but it does depend on your individual circumstances. But let's not bash people for making certain decisions just because we can't stretch our minds far enough to imagine what that would look like because of where we are right now. Thank you so much for inspiring us, Yolz. I think it's really awesome, like I said, to know that something like that is possible. If you are not there yet, it is possible with discipline to do that and so much more. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on what you think about this topic. So if you do have a thought or an opinion, drop it down in the comment section. You're more than welcome to disagree with me as well. It is my opinion at the end of the day, and it is not advice. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a huge thumbs up. And if you haven't done so, please smash that subscribe button so we can have more of these conversations. Bye, guys.